It's not just being like a an organization that has like a DEI lens, but it's being like interacting as individuals with the DEIJ lens. Because again, like if the environment that you're working in isn't a sustainable, if it isn't a safe one for your BIPOC, leaders, then they're not going to stay, or they're not going to be able to do their best work because they're just like in survival mode, and that's something that I've like seen a lot recently in some of my work environments, and has been a big learning lesson, I think.
Everyone, whether it's morning, afternoon, evening, we want to welcome you to another fun, enriching, and also brilliant episode of the Hardwood Podcast. And that is because of the guests that we have here today. But today I'm your co-host, Dr. Thomas Rashard Easley, aka the Hip Hop Forester, but also aka the co-host to my friend, who's also always joining me now and making things better. I got to ask my friend if he'll, say something, please.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm with two great people, talking to two great people, Sam and Dr. Easley, and I'm happy to be here yet again.
Well, we're about to do this, and I always want to thank Bennett for also finding us great leaders, in this space, because today we are speaking to, and I hope I'm going to say it right, Sam Armacost. Did I get it? Oh, okay, thank you. Okay.
For
Now,
sure.
we're about to have a good time here because Sam has a big background that I'm not going to try to tear up, but I know that you have a deep love for music. And we just finished talking about that we're all in the outdoors. So you have a deep love for the natural environment that surrounds us. And some would say maybe, like backcountry extraordinaire, because you actually have worked in serving as a guide in like day trips in in the Boundary Waters, and you still stay heavily involved in these different type of outdoor activities. And then I also have heard that you recently moved from the Bay, is it from the Bay Area to Minnesota?
Grew up in the Bay, moved from LA to Minnesota about 2 years ago.
Moved from LA to Minnesota, grew up in the Bay. Okay, listen here. Talk about a wonderful and beautiful background. But you go from cool, gray, superb weather.
Yes.
Some would say, I'm sure, challenging maybe some pieces of the environment, but wonderful weather too. Minnesota. I went to school in the Midwest, so I went to school in Iowa. And I know that when I was living there, the cold and I got into a relationship. And it was a rough one a lot of the time. So I'm keeping you in good thoughts while you're there, but also the people are wonderful there. And of course, the environment is wonderful there.
Yes. Yeah, that's why I'm here, or there. I guess not right now. I'm not in Minnesota, but yeah, it is really because of the environment and living with all four seasons that has totally, I don't know, captured my heart. I think it's getting to like, I feel like you have to pay attention to what's happening outside all year round, because sometimes it's life or death. But also it's just, it's beautiful and dynamic in ways that I didn't experience for the first like 22 years of my life. And so much big love to Minnesota and the weather there.
Okay. Well, hey, then, we're going to, as I had mentioned, I want to, before everyone got tuned in, I want to have a great conversation with our professional extraordinaire leader here. So first, I just want to check in with you. We all probably just came off of some travel and stuff. Sam, how are you doing?
Well, thank you for asking. I'm doing well. It's always so grounding to come back home. I'm in Oakland right now, and it's kind of a bittersweet trip because my family is leaving. They're moving away for the first time in 30 years or something. So I feel like I'm seeing everything with fresh eyes, but also, I don't know, it's like I can see all the years that I've spent here and growing up here and noticing things, and you just kind of appreciate it in a new way when it's kind of the end of a chapter, as you've known it. And I'm looking out my window and it's this beautiful like green view. It's still very like lush and rainy right now, but it kind of draws out the color more. And there's sort of this canyon off in the distance it's just like this exposed red rock. And, I think of how many thousands, millions of times I've looked out at this view, and it just feels extra sweet now.
Okay. Well, thank you for breaking that down, because I think that the way that you just shared that with us, right? Is to me, I'm feeling a passion and an appreciation. One for anything that is in the outdoors. Something that's naturally there. But of course, people just I picked that up as you were describing. And even giving us the colors, of the canyon and, the different things that you're seeing. So, I like to just, just ask you, like this, is that people oftentimes don't associate city, some say city life, with the exposure to extra human life, or, I want to say, connecting it to the outdoors, if you will. How did you stay? And I'm asking you this as a guy who's grew up in the city too. I grew up in the biggest city in Alabama, in Birmingham. Okay, I consider myself, like a nature guy. Not like Ric Flair, but some people say nature boy Ric Flair, nature guy Thomas Easley. That's what I want to say. But how did you stay connected to what I would also even say like is the natural world? Growing up in the Bay Area.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I was homeschooled until I was 15 or so, and then I went to public school my last 2 years of high school. But I feel like the outdoors were kind of like that was my recess. It was my playground. And I don't know. I don't really feel like I grew up really connected to sort of like the outdoor recreational side of things. But I was super fortunate to have just enough green spaces nearby to feel like I had sort of this little oasis to escape to, despite living, in the city. And it wasn't until my dad, he sent me away to this canoe camp when I was 15, and that was sort of how I got connected to just kind of like the landscape in Minnesota, and experiencing canoe country for the first time. But yeah, I think I've always just been like a very independent and curious and explorative, I don't know if that's a word, person. And so a lot of my fondest memories as a child are spent in this park that's down the street. And it has these fishing ponds, and so random, like really so random for Oakland. But there's these 2 casting pools, and it's just like in the woods. Like they saved this one little enclave of trees right by the freeway. And so it really has been more, I think in my adulthood that I've kind of connected with that sort of like childlike spirit, from my youth, of just like really connecting, like, oh, my life can still kind of be like that. You can tap into that sense of like curiosity and exploration, no matter what age you are, no matter where you are. It's just like finding your spots, especially for the city. Like I as a teenager, I really didn't care. I don't think it was that connective actively. And now as an adult, I've lived in Tokyo, I've lived in Los Angeles, I've worked in San Francisco, I've grew up in Oakland. Like you have to like learn how to find your spots and your ways of reconnecting and like grounding yourself, even in the most unlikely spaces. And so I think like over the years, I've really like, I don't know, felt sort of reconnected to that like baby Sam self, and trying to like draw that out for other people too in the work that I'm doing now.
When I thank you for that, when I'm sometimes working with people and I see them stressing out, I'll say, be nice to your future self.
Mm.
But then I always say, pay attention to your young self, because it was like that, because that is really who is always here. It's the child, it's the kid, we're just grown up children, really. And the experiences that I have had, even the bad ones now, I don't look at them as bad, when I look back over them, tough, challenging, but I can see how they help to shape, me in this time, me and my perspective, and me and different things. So I really appreciate, everything that you just said. And now with that, I'm curious, what would, if you can share, what led to the decision of going from West Coast to Minnesota? Going from, like how you mentioned having all four seasons. Like I remember for me when I lived in the Midwest, we only had, two seasons. It was hot or it was fighting because you were fighting the cold. It was fighting you, And then when I go to Alabama, I've had four seasons. I will fall back in love and spring back into everything as the summer landed on me, and then I will winter through things. Okay, but so just curious. But could you share with me? I know, hey, everybody in Minnesota, I love you all. I still visit all of the time, but y'all know it's cold. But just curious though, like what if you can share, like what led to that move?
It is cold. Well, I don't think I totally knew what I was getting myself into, but I knew I was open. I was ready, for kind of a change. And what really led to it was, so I in 2021, I paddled the length of the Mississippi River with my dad, and it took us one month just to get through Minnesota alone, which is one of 10 states on the Mississippi River. It's the first one. And you wouldn't really think this, but there's I think 700 miles of the Mississippi River are just in Minnesota. So it's like almost a third of the river is in that first state, because it's so windy and it kind of like does this big question marky shape through the state. And so we spent so much time there. And we just met like really, really good people along the way. And I had grown up going to this canoe camp by the time I was 15 or so, and I'd worked there for 10 or 12 years or something like that. And my dad's mom grew up in the Iron Range, just kind of like northern Minnesota. And so there were all these like different kind of connecting points to Minnesota that I had never really fully absorbed of how, I don't know. Yeah, how much I was connected to Minnesota, whether it's through family or through, my own summers that I'd spent there, or and so I think the trip and giving us like so much time to really like marinate in that history and just the magic of, I don't know, the North Country. And I think by the time I hit the cities, I was like, I think I'm gonna move here. And I had amazing friends in Duluth who had offered me a place to stay. And before I was even thinking about it, like they offered me the place to stay. And I think that was what allowed me to start thinking, like considering it. And then by the time I got there on the river, it was like a done deal. It was a really easy decision.
Okay, so you initiated, you did, like this amazing trip, like with family, with your father. I'm not curious, like what is it then like being I want to say a steward of excursions, because you're leading, experiences that people are having. But I also just want to point out at the same time, this wonderful person has also gone on excursions. So I like knowing that someone has done something that they're taking people through, that they're taking them on. So I just want to say thank you. Okay, that means I need to get in line. Okay, but what is it like being a steward of excursions and an educator, in doing in doing outdoor program? And I know I didn't ask, but I don't want to assume, but as a woman of color, in this space. So if I can post that question that way, how, like, what is it like? I'm a forester and I have stories to tell, being a man of color working out west and in the Pacific Northwest. So to know when someone is doing this in this space, I'm like, how is it for you?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so many different things. I've been fortunate to get to work in this space in kind of a few different capacities. So I've worked through nonprofits, I've worked through on like the coordinating side, or I've worked through in nonprofits on the guiding side, or I've worked for outfitters, and I've worked for summer camps. And each environment is really different depending on kind of what the the values of the organization are. And so each experience has really varied. But I think, the through line is that you don't see too much of us out here yet. And I think being really visible, it is something that I grapple with a lot. And especially I think moving to the Midwest, and moving kind of further north of the metro area too, canoeing specifically is a very kind of niche sport, and it's very heavily male dominated, white. It feels like something that white folks have had more access to, despite long standing tradition and history, indigenous history of using canoes as their mode of travel through that region beyond, further north, as their way of connecting and migrating to their different sort of camps seasonally. And it's just frustrating how much that history gets erased. And now sort of that culture has gotten pretty whitewashed, I think. I feel really, just in this position of really wanting to be an example of who can be, there is no type for who can be an outdoor guide. And you can grow up in a city and still do this work. It doesn't make you less qualified. It doesn't make you less connected, or less able to connect. I think, depending on what our lifestyle is and those influences around us, we might sort of grow up thinking that we don't have a connection to the outdoors. But I think it's more just we've been separated, and but it's still all around us. And what kind of keeps driving me is just seeing other BIPOC, outdoor, femme, non-binary leaders out here, really changing the narrative and the landscape of who's out here doing these things and who's been doing these things too. It's not like there's been a gap where there's been no people of color out here doing all these different sports. It's just who got highlighted, whose image was amplified. And I'm just trying to stay consistent right now and show up where I can, and really lift up the others that I'm seeing too doing their thing, and creating these communities and these spaces outdoors of just reminding each other that this is so a part of our cultures and our heritage, and that's a whole other tangent I could go on of just growing up in the States, but being if you're mixed race, or grow up with different cultures, that oftentimes those things can get kind of diluted. Those rituals or traditions and practices can get diluted. And so really just trying to make space to sort of celebrate those cultural practices and cultural relationships with nature.
And just adding on to that, you're talking about how there's really been no gaps in history with BIPOC people outdoors. I think people don't realize that with Minnesota. I was doing some research over the summer, and George Bonga, or the Bonga brothers, were both born. One of them says that they're the first Americans born in Minnesota, but they led a lot of just canoe trips, fur trading posts up Minnesota, and super wealthy Black individual. I think it was in the 1860s. And this was way, way back before you would really think about just Black people being in Minnesota. And he led canoe trips, led expeditions, just knew the environment and knew it really well. But that just gets erased and kind of forgotten through the years.
Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioning that makes me, think about, coming into forestry. When I came into it, it wasn't until after working as a forester, I started, of course, learning about how so many of the things that we did in the practice, like prescribed brands were taken from indigenous people. You know, and of course, once I dig into my personal history, you know, that gets even deeper there. And you know, and so I've learned to appreciate and to acknowledge, you know, and to try to celebrate, you know, appropriately, you know, those or ancestors in particular, but those who have led to why we're here or who have made it, you know, so that we can be here. And that's a new part, you know, of like my values, I feel, and it's also a new part of what it is that I'm doing, which makes me kind of have a different question than what's on the paper, Sam. I got a question for you. All right, you know, when you mentioned earlier, all of the number of things that you've done and you've touched the outdoor profession, I'll say it that way, you know, in a number of different ways. You know, how to me, and the impression, you know, that I have is you're, you know, somewhat, you know, like specific, you know, with the things that you do, intentional, I should say, you know, what you know, kind of like or what you did, you know, what you coalesce with. Could I? Hopefully, this is. I'm going to say because I'm saying it as it's coming together as I'm saying it. So please, I apologize, and also to Bennett. But like, you know, do you have a process that you go through that you kind of choose the groups that you work with or the organizations, you know, like that you align or that you align with, I should say. You know, is there like a process that helps you? Like I know before I came to Yale, when I looked at the School of the Environment now, knowing its history, I'm wearing my T-shirt now, Alabama A&M forestry program. One of the values was forestry and that they cared about the environment. And so I still feel honored to be connected, but I felt honored to go there and to work. But I've also worked with other places that I won't say right now. I'm gonna keep it positive, where I was like challenged by some of the mission. And it was part of the reason why I had to take a step. So that's kind of, I just wanted to share that just so that you know the nucleus where my question is coming from. But I'm not asking you to share anything bad. I'm just asking you to share the positive things of, you know, how do you find those who you work with and stuff?
Yeah, that has been definitely an area that I have had to really like dive into and ask those like hard questions. Because sometimes like a organization, like it seems really promising and it seems really great, and but it does kind of take a little bit more sort of fine tuning of, you know, of whether it's in your interview process or just getting to know what their organization is. So there's been a lot of trial and error on my part for sure, and I think right now I'm more at a place where the work that I want to do is like for BIPOC folks by BIPOC folks, and like I sort of set that as the bar from the jump, and depending on what the response is to that, and that's then how I gauge like, okay, how much are these folks invested in having BIPOC folks, like their perspective, like involved in whatever thing you're planning from the beginning, you know, like not just as sort of like a side consultant once you've come up with your plan and now you're ready to get like a person of color stamp of approval, you know, but it's like I'm looking at who's employed, you know, like how long have they been there? And I think nowadays you see a lot more like on people's websites about their values or their DEI committees and stuff. And I won't lie, like more and more those things mean less and less, you know, and you have to see I think what I am paying more attention to is like, who are the people of color who are working there? How long have they been there? What is their, you know, like, what's their positionality within the organization? Like what power do they have? And what autonomy are they given? And like management do they get to have? And that feels like it says way more than like any page on a website, you know. Yeah, just really investing, like putting your money where your mouth is too, you know. It's not just, I mean, definitely with who you hire, and it's like, what is the work that you're doing, and does it have an equity lens to it, and who's leading it? And so those are all, I don't know, kind of filters that I'm using to make my kind of arrangements and connections and also just, as a contracting worker person now who, I contract to host a lot of affinity events. And I feel, a lot of time I have to really like kind of protect my energy, because there's a lot of interest for sure. But I'm like, okay, let's talk, before, because it would look really good for y'all to have this, on your webpage of that you have this partnership. But yeah, I think it really matters how you treat your staff. And like, if you take care of your staff, then you are taking care of like the work that they will be able to do, because you have like valued and see them as a person, and everything that they are bringing to the workspace with the identity that they have. And because of those differences, it enriches that workspace. But that can so often be like the thing that gets underestimated or taken advantage of, or I don't know, that's where a lot of harm can happen too. So that's a very like sensitive spot, because we're all out here trying to like live and thrive and do good work, and also those partnerships or those relationships are really vital to be able to do those things, and they have to be like done with a lot of care, I think.
Well, thank you. I think this is Sam, you just kind of led it to some. I think that we should probably add something new to the show. Okay. It's called the educational part, because Sam, you just literally, how many times I work with clients and they ask me, how do you do this DEI stuff? And Sam, what I love is, darn it, you just told how to do it. Okay. You explained how to be thoughtful from the beginning. You added a racial equity lens, but really a justice lens, because you're not creating victims. You're working to prevent victimization. You're thinking about everybody in the organization, even though you're intentional thinking about Black and Indigenous and other people of color, but in doing that, you're actually thinking about everybody. Oh my goodness. Whoa, whoa. And I'm moved and how it just rolled off your tongue, like you're just talking. And so I'm hoping anyone who's listening right now, I just hope that you, one, see how this individual is doing this. I'm going to use a word now that might seem too simple, but naturally, because they're not working to connect. They're working to check themselves as they are connecting. And I'm talking about you. Okay, so you're always mindful of what you're doing and the effect and impact that you're having with other people, which is why I love when you said I also have to protect my energy. God dog it, if that isn't brilliant, man, I wish I could teach that in a class. Just bottle everything up that you just said and put it in a manual, because I'm excuse my tone, I'm just so excited hearing everything, because I'm always like, one, I'm listening for the brilliant and more eloquent way to say things. You just did it. Thank you. But then also someone who's doing it in real time. So then that's why if I was to ask you, I'm not going to, because you just answered, there's no reason to repeat genius again. But if I was to ask you how to do DEI, you can answer it because you're doing it. And I just want everyone listening to just take that. And I could say something else. I can put thoughtfulness to it. Forget it. I don't have to say it. I can say, how are you creating access? How are you keeping in mind? So I just want to say thank you. I hope it's okay that I just kind of went there, because I just want more people to hear this and to see that it really isn't. It takes willingness and an intentionality to do this, and also a desire, and also a thoughtfulness for yourself too. I just want to thank you for sharing that. And I guess let me get 5 seconds to
Well, no, I mean, I have to attribute it all to just having incredible teachers and mentors and coworkers who have really, like, they have been able to articulate those things with so much like fierceness, and I think like we've just like seen some shit, and so I don't know. I think like there's just a lot of like, we've been through it and we just want something better. We want something better for ourselves, for like the communities at large, and like wanting to work together with more synergy, and just running up against a lot of obstacles. And so I think again, as I get older, I'm just like getting a little bit better at sort of setting my own boundaries and expectations, and just like kind of standing by them a little bit more firmly than I probably have in the past. And that's because I've watched kind of my elders do that too, and be like, okay, that's like, I can do that. I have every right to do that too, and hold my ground. And that it's like we're worth investing in, and we're here, we have so much to contribute, and we've been contributing so much. And so just really wanting to like give credit where it's due,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Also, shout out
yes.
to Lil Sim's song "Protect My Energy," which like really should be all of our anthems ever. That's all.
All right. Okay. All right. Everybody take that. Go listen to it. Download. Go support. Okay. We just got
So
a
good.
shameless plug and promote on the show. Give us a call. All right. Okay.
Next question.
Will you tell us, excuse me, about something cool that you've done within the last couple of months? You're giving us all this brilliance, but is there something that you identify that you've done that you would say is cool? And if there's a better word for it, please, pardon me. But yeah.
Before she answers,
Okay.
I'm very curious of what she's going to say, because it's something new every single time I talk to her. So I'm really curious. This is a big
secret. No pressure.
Okay, the last couple of months have honestly been a little bit more low-key, because summertime is like when I'm just all over the place. But like most recently, I took a week-long naturalist course, and it was really specific to the like Northwoods biome. So in the area that I live in, Duluth, it was 5 days, like really totally dedicated to talking about the geology and ecology and I don't know, wildlife and all these things about that biome. And so I just felt like I got to experience, like, this isn't like super flashy and cool, but to me it was really cool because I'm so self-taught, I think, and so much of what I've learned is just from like being outside where I live and kind of beyond. And this class was this very structured way of like putting together all these pieces of like how the rocks formed, like how the cliffs along the North Shore got there, how the lake got there, and like why the rocks look the way they do. And like, there's just so much. So it just felt like it started to fill in all these gaps of different questions I've had, or it, sort of this, just like really learning how interconnected everything is too, is just so mind-blowing and beautiful. So that was something that felt like a treat to myself, of like getting to really do something very educational for myself. I'm usually the one guiding the experience for other people, but to get to be the student and to really absorb all this new information and wonder was really cool to me. But I guess a little earlier this fall, I went to Banff National Park up in Canada, and it's sort of like the northern extension of like the Rocky Mountains, but it's in Canada. And it's just like so mind-blowing. I got to get a bunch of my family members together. And it was sort of like I was guiding, but for my family, and that was kind of weird, but also really sweet. and yeah, we just had an amazing time, like exploring a place that one of my sort of like an elder in my family, or kind of family friend community. He's been there a million times, but it was a first, I think, for everybody else. And so we just spent a whole week camping together and hiking a bunch, and just you get up so high. There's these alpine lakes that are like turquoise blue, and it was just unlike anything I'd ever seen. And so it was fun to get a chance to explore a totally new area. And yeah.
Have you been enjoying the episodes of the Heartwood Podcast? Do you like the topics that we discuss? If you are interested in going deeper, we encourage you to get the book written by our own Dr. Thomas Rashard Easley, Mind, Heart for Diversity. And you can purchase the book from our website, mindheartfordiversity.com. Thank you.
Yeah, that's putting me in the zone of wanting to think about things that, that uplift me and that elevate me. So, could you share with us a cherished memory that you've had on one of these excursions, one of these stewardship trips, just please.
Oh, I have one. It's
All
so simple, but on the first day that we were on the Mississippi River, my dad, so it's me, my dad is not very outdoorsy, to be perfectly honest. Like the last time he had been in a canoe was in the 70s or something. And he had, long story of how we even got into this whole everything, but he works a lot. He's worked from home my whole life. And so I just like, I know him as like, he's posted up at his office and at his office desk. The first day that we were on the river, he just like every hour he would just kind of stop paddling, and I don't think he was very even like aware that I was there, but he would just like stop paddling and look around and be like, God, it's so wonderful out here. And there was another time where we were kind of taking a break, and he was just like dipping his toes into the water over the side of the gunnel, and just like as we were sort of like drifting down this like really meandering part of the river. And it was just such an intimate moment of seeing my father's guard really let down, I think, and just totally like rested or something, just without any obligations, and just very present. And that isn't, that's just not like a state that I see him in very often. And so for him also to just choose to do this trip with me and be so out of his, seemingly out of his element, but then like from day one, it was just like, oh no, this is what like returning looks like. And I think that I have that image kind of like seared in my memory of, there was a great blue heron like right around the corner as we were drifting down, and it was just like right in the reeds and these like huge cattails next to it, and it didn't move. It just kind of like looked up at us, and just like being so close to such a just a majestic creature, and it just felt like the whole moment was just so picturesque of like, just kind of being at peace and seeing like what the power of being in nature and being really immersed in it, what that can have on you like in an instant, and that was a special moment.
Well, I think that as I've gotten lost in the experiences, I really really like this is good. I feel like I'm traveling alongside you. I just have just a couple other questions, and then I'd love to ask if you have any questions for us. With you being in this space, as you mentioned, that's been heavily male dominated, and at times even white male dominated. You're creating new experiences, bringing more people into the profession or into the industry. Could you share with us like how some ideas of how you would like to see this profession change over time, and if over time is too long, maybe let's say within just like the next decade, like between now and say 2033.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, we talk about like hiring more people of color and getting more folks in positions of power in the industry, right? And I'm learning more and more that it's not just like the one and done hire and then the problem is fixed. It's like an overhaul of the community, of like your work culture, again, of like, it's not just being like an organization that has like a DEI lens, but it's being like interacting as individuals with the DEIJ lens. Because again, like if the environment that you're working in isn't a sustainable, if it isn't a safe one for your BIPOC, leaders, then they're not going to stay, or they're not going to be able to do their best work because they're just like in survival mode, and that's something that I've like seen a lot recently in some of my work environments, and has been a big learning lesson. I think we're all learning, and like by no means do I have all the answers either. But that's just something I've observed recently of like, it's not just like putting more money towards things, but it's like really being able to like be introspective of like, your organization's history and like who has it impacted, who has it positively impacted, who has it negatively impacted, who have you highlighted or who's been absent from that spotlight, and like being accountable to those things and not shying away that maybe you made a mistake, and or maybe there's a history of mistakes. And I think like we're really trying to like just like not just shame that, but it's like, no, we want to move forward, but there needs to be acknowledgement that like harm happened, and then like, involvement from like all voices, and particularly people of color, to like have a say in what that like how that healing looks, and I think sometimes like organizations will kind of come up with their own definition or their own plan for what healing is supposed to look like or what they can offer without even actually asking. And then that doesn't really get to the, that's just becomes its own sort of cycle. What I wish for is, yes, like more investing in us and in the work that we're doing, and just trusting us that we know, we got it. Like if you got gear, donate it, blend it, whatever. If you got funds, donate it, and without so many strings attached, without like needing to be the cover of your newsletter for the next 10 years, like just trust, that like the thing that we're trying to bring to our community is like, it's true. And I don't know. Yeah. I just wish there was a little bit more trust, I guess, in just letting us do our thing. And, that's been a fun part of contracting, I guess, is getting to like find the partnerships where it feels like they really like see what I have to offer and are like, okay, let's get you what you need and go and do it. So I think that's just one of the, many things that could change or be different, or but I think that's where my head is at these days.
All right. Well, we've talked about your background. We've talked about, the work in particular, working with BIPOC communities. We talked about the challenging experiences one can have in these spaces, but also the courageous things that one does to push forward. We've even talked about cherished moments, memories, family thoughts, and also, what ideas do you have, for how this industry can look different in the next few years? Do you have any questions for us or any comments that say that I may have neglected to ask you, that you'd like to, make sure that, hey, Thomas, make sure that they know this, or, ask us something that kind of, pull something out. But you don't have to ask us anything. That's fine.
No, I have a question. I am so curious. Y'all have, I mean, you like such a, I just like love storytelling, and I love this platform, and as a way of just like y'all get to be this like conduit for bringing in stories and sharing them back out. And so I'm curious to hear like what y'all's perspective or experience has been like hearing all these different leaders in this, in the kind of overarching environmental or DEI world. And like, if you could synthesize, or if you see sort of like a through line through a lot of these people's experiences or what they've had to share, like what are sort of like themes that you've been noticing through the people you've been talking to? Are there any kind of like commonalities in people's messages, or is everyone coming at it from a totally different lens? I don't know, like you get to be, you're the holder of all these people's different experiences. So I'm just curious, like what you've taken away from that. I know it's probably a lot.
I've been doing this about 4 years now, 5 years. So you want to go first?
Yeah, mine might be a little bit simpler, but for me, it's just been, I guess, like hope. Everybody's doing what they're doing, and people are looking forward towards the future. I haven't really talked to anybody, or we haven't really talked to anybody who had like more despair than anything. People have just been really optimistic, and not even optimistic might not be the right word, but it's tangible changes within reach, and they're the proof of it. The actions that they're doing and leading the way to making the tangible change happen. So I guess for me, it's just hope and finding that family wherever you're at.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. All right. I feel like this interview is like almost symbolic of like when people say, it's like you're never alone because you're really the composite of all the ancestors, the millions of them that it took to get you here. And it's funny to me, this interview was like the composite of all the interviews we had to get to this point, because the way that you talked about your experience in the work environment and how how it's like you're very considerate of others, but then you're also considerate of yourself. What I feel is that a lot of some of the commonality is that like those pieces that I just mentioned that you share, either some people are just coming into an awakening of that, or they have it's like they're either coming into an awakening or they're just understanding the value that they have in order to give that to themselves. We've spoken to people, let's say like they're further along in the life spectrum, if you will, like say via age, but it's fascinating. Everyone kind of has that everyone has some kind of an awakening. And then over time, they become more comfortable with, I am worthy of this. Okay. Thank you, Bennett, for, mentioning hope. I found that people continue to get more hope, but the more that they converse with people who are either actively seeking solutions or who have actually found a solution to something. And so I think that, so I feel like that's the other thing. So there's a lot of discovery, I feel here, on the show. There's a lot of, making room for yourself. And I think sometimes what I've seen is that when people come on the show, they kind of leave thinking more about that. Sometimes I do think it's in the way that we converse with people. Yeah. And then I also think that there's a commonality among people who have not had the opportunity to share their story enough. Because, or to share their story. In some cases, some people just haven't shared it, They come here and this is a platform for them to share as much as they want, really for as long as they want, because if it's past a certain time, we can break it up. We want to make sure that people speak and don't censor themselves, if you will. But we notice that when people are talking, a lot of folks, it's new for them to be able to share their story, which also means that it's new for them to reflect on their story, which means for a lot of them, it's new for them to hit pause on what they're doing, as you mentioned with your dad. And out there in the boat, and
exactly.
Wow, every hour, So I mean, we've had, and I think this is me. We've had interviews, and I want to say this about me. I went into forestry partly because I didn't want to be around people. So this is why I can say something about me. I've had it where each interview I'm having those, man, I wish I was sitting in the room with them. If I'm not sitting in the room, because I continue to like just fall back in love with people each time I get this. So then that's the thing that I get is to be able to fall back into the human spirit, like, oh man, you know, and that's the commonality that gets me is that I get reawakened to soften up each time I'm in a conversation, or to pause, to be more thoughtful. So to do the thing that I'm telling other people, I get it reflected back at me. So that's my commonality that happens to me is I feel like an episodic awakening every time. And then to be able to work with Bennett, I just call this out with Bennett, you know, to share with someone. I think that's the other thing, the commonality is that no one wants to do a lot of what they do alone, right? So that's another commonality with me. I don't really want to do anything alone. So to be able to talk to people with Bennett here, you know, it's a blessing because it hadn't always been like that. You know, when you're in these spaces and you're trying to represent, you know, it's kind of like you're carrying the world on your shoulders. And so I think in this space, people feel like they can take that world off for a minute. And I feel like I can do it too when I'm in the space with him. So
my pleasure.
I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much for both sharing. I mean, yeah, but a like special vantage point that y'all have. And I think to be drawing out and giving people a platform, like you're saying, to maybe it's the first time that they've really like had a chance to really process or think about like everything that they do and everything they're contributing and just like making space to really share their story and amplify their work is really important. And y'all have been such welcoming and warm hosts. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you for being such a gracious guest and being on here with us and sharing, as you did. You can see both of us were cheesing from ear to ear. I don't know what, something about this episode, we both were like showing our pearls, so I just want to say thank you, for doing that. Because I was watching Ben and like, smiling hard. And I'm looking at myself like, oh, I am too. Like, hold up, wait a minute. Both of us. So thank you for bringing that, protected energy and guided energy into this space and into this room with us. And I hope that all of the listeners who have picked up on this, that you feel the same way that myself and my co-hosts, do in this moment, elevated, having a strong sense of hope and also possibility. But it takes you also continuing to be curious, as our guest has shown us, curious about others, and also I think more importantly, curious about yourself, so that you can see how you connect, with other folks and how other people connect with you. Let me check with Bennett, just like, is there any other thing that you want to say?
No, I'm just thinking about trying to go outside now. I want to get outside, go down a river on a canoe. I don't know. Just life.
Okay. Well, then we will not belabor this any further so we can all get out and not like the movie. Get outside. Right. Everybody get out, be with each other, be with yourselves, but be outdoors because it seems like that's where you'll find yourself in case if you were looking. So I want to thank you, Sam, for being here with us. Bennett, thank you, for helping us set this up. And I guess more importantly, our listeners, who are checking us out, please really take this one in, and go back and reflect on it and think about how you affect other people and how other people affect you and how you can support other people's energy and protect your own at the same time while going back where we naturally supposed to be, which is outdoors. This is Dr. Thomas Rashard Easley, a.k.a. the Hip Hop Forester, a.k.a. the Respecter of the Hardwood Podcast guest. All right. And so we're going to close out with that. Everybody go have some fun. If you don't, and if you're not doing it, email us and we'll tell you how we're having fun. Everybody, peace. All right.